Welcome. Come a little closer. I'm Evangeline Moss, and tonight the cypress trees are still, and the candlelight is low. Out here, the air is thick with stories, the kind that drift through the moss and settle softly around you. So, rest your eyes, listen closely, and let the swamp tell you a story. There's a place in Florida where the past does not pass. It settles in the heat that clings to your skin long after the sun has gone down, in the bricks that hold warmth like a memory that refuses to release, in the soil that darkens, not from time, but from what was left behind. And if you listen, really listen, you begin to notice something else. A rhythm. Not loud, not urgent, but steady. Like the breath. Like hands moving in the dark. Like something continuing long after it should have ended. Tonight, we are going to Ybor City, a place built on industry, on imagination, on fire and survival, but also on something deeper. Something buried deep beneath the streets, woven into the harbor, pressed into the very walls. 3 stories, 3 layers, one city that does not forget, that blood built it, that ash holds it, and the harbor that still breathes beneath it. So if you're walking, slow down. If you're listening, lean in. And whatever you do, don't assume the ground beneath you is still. Because Ybor City, it rarely is. In Ybor City, the heat does not fade when the sun goes down. It lingers. It settles into the brick like memory onto bone. Slow, stubborn, unwilling to be told when to end. Even in January, even in the cool, thin hours before dawn, the air holds a kind of breath, as if something beneath the streets is still warm, still working, still awake. Elena noticed it her first night in the archives. She had come for history, paper history, ink and dates and immigration records, payroll ledgers, shipping manifests, and other things centuries ago. The kind of work that felt safe because it was finished. Because the past, she believed, could not look back. The archives were tucked behind the renovated cigar factory, one of those long rectangular buildings with tall windows and stubborn shadows. During the day, it was all tours and curated nostalgia. At night, it belonged to dust and silence. Or what passed for it. Elena worked under a single lamp, its light pooling gold over the ledger in front of her. The book was older than the building's renovation, older than the electric wiring, older even than the city that she knew. Its spine had split in places, repaired with careful hands that had long since turned to soil. She turned a page. Names, dozen at a time, written in looping script that suggested patience. Each line held a first name, last name, country of origin, hours worked, and paid earned. And then again, and again. At first, she didn't notice it. Patterns rarely announce themselves. They gather quietly, like humidity. But something tugged. A name. Mateo Rios. She traced it with the tip of her pencil, not touching the ink, just hovering close enough to feel its presence. The next page. Mateo Rios. Next. Mateo Rios. Same handwriting, same steady line, same hours logged, night shifts, always night shifts. Elena frowned, flipping back, then forward, then faster. The name repeated not just across pages, but across years. 10, 15, 20. The ink never changed. The hand never aged. The man, if he was a man, never stopped working. A chill moved through her then, subtle as a breath against the back of her neck. Not fear, not yet, just awareness. She leaned back in her chair. The wood creaked softly beneath her weight. The room stretched around her in long rows of shelves and stacked boxes, each one filled with something that used to matter. Used to. Outside, the distant hum of nightlife drifted through the walls. Music, laughter, the clink of glasses. Ybor City was alive in a way that had always been after dark. Pulsing, electric, hungry. Elena closed the ledger. For a moment, she sat very still. Then, slowly, she turned it over. Stamped into the back cover, so faint it almost escaped notice, was a symbol. A spiral, but not quite. It coiled too tightly, the lines uneven, organic. Less like a design, more like something that had grown, or something that had been seen. She stared at it longer than she meant to. Long enough that the room seemed to shift around her. Long enough that the heat pressed closer. And then a sound. Close. Not from the street. Not from the building settling. From somewhere inside the room. Elena's breath caught. She did not turn immediately. Some instincts are older than others, older than reasons. They tell you that to look is to confirm, and to confirm is to lose something you cannot get back to. The sound came again, a page turning. But she was no longer touching the book. Slowly, too slowly, she lifted her eyes. Across the room, at the far end of the archive table, another ledger lay open. She was certain it had been closed. Certain. Now its pages shifted, one folding over the next with a careful, deliberate motion, as if guided, as if read. Elena stood. The chair scraped loudly against the floor, the sound too sharp, too human for the space it broke. The pages stopped moving. Silence rushed in to fill the gap. She took a step forward, and then another. Each one felt heavier than the last, as though the air itself resisted her movement, not pushing her back, but thickening, insisting she noticed. The ledger waited, open, patient. When she reached it, she saw a name before her. Elena Valeria. Her blood went cold. The ink was fresh, still wet enough to shine beneath the lamplight. Beneath her name, in the same steady hand, night shift, ongoing. The records will lead Elena out into the living street, into cigar lounges that never fully closed, into basements beneath historic buildings, into conversations with people who speak like they've been rehearsed the same lines for decades. She will meet a man who remembered the founding of Ybor City not as history, but as a memory. And one of them will recognize her before she introduces herself. Elena did not remember leaving the archives. Later, she would try to reconstruct it. The closing of the ledger, the locking of the doors, the way her hand must have moved through familiar motions, while her mind remained fixed on that single, impossible line of ink. Elena Valera, night shift, ongoing. But memory, she would learn, is not always a record. Sometimes it's kindness. Sometimes it's an edit. The night outside wrapped around her as she stepped into the street, thick and damp, and the air clinging to the skin like something that did not want to let go. The sounds of laughter and music still drifted through Ybor City, but they felt distant now, flattened, as if she was hearing them through a wall. She walked without direction at first, past storefronts that glowed too warmly, past windows where people leaned close to one another, speaking in low voices, their faces lit by candlelight and amber glass. There was a rhythm to the street, one she had felt before, but never quite noticed. A pulse, not loud, not obvious, but steady. And underneath it, something slower, something patient. Her steps slowed. There, between two brighter buildings, a narrow doorway opened into the shadow. No sign hung above it, no music spilled out. Just a faint, steady glow, as if a light burned somewhere deep inside. Elena hesitated, then stepped in. The temperature dropped immediately. Not cold, never cold here, but cooler, like stepping beneath water. The room was low and long, its ceilings crossed with dark beams. Tables lined the walls, their surfaces worn smooth by decades of use. At the far end, a bar stretched beneath a mirror, so old its reflection seemed softened, as though time itself had blurred its edges. And behind it, a man. He did not look up when she entered. He was polishing a glass with slow, deliberate care, the cloth moving in circles that never seemed to finish. Elena approached anyways. Her footsteps echoed too loudly on the floor. Or perhaps the room had grown too quiet. "I think," she began, her voice catching slightly, "I'm in the wrong place." The man set the glass down. Only then did he lift his eyes. There are moments when the world shifts, not with noise, but with recognition. This was one of them. He knew her. Not in the way strangers sometimes pretend to, making a face, placing a resemblance. No. This was certainty. A quiet, settled knowing that moved through his expression like something returning home. "You came for the records," he said. It was not a question. Elena's throat tightened. "How do you—" "You always do," he replied, almost gently. Her breath faltered. The words settled into her chest with a weight she did not understand. "Have we met?" she asked. A pause. Not long. Just enough to feel like a choice. "Not the way you remember," he said. Something in her recoiled at that. Not fear exactly, but resistance. The mind pushing back against a shape it could not hold. "I don't understand." "No," he said softly. "Not yet." He reached beneath the bar and drew out a small wooden box. Even before he set it down, Elena felt it. That same subtle pull. That same quiet insistence. The box was worn, its edges softened by time. When he opened it, the scent of tobacco drifted up, rich, earthly, threaded with something faintly sweet. Inside lay a row of cigars, each one wrapped in paper stamped with a familiar mark. The spiral. Closer now, she could see it clearly. It was not ink. It had been pressed into paper, the lines slightly raised, as though the design had been pushed towards from within. "Take one," the man said. "I don't smoke." A faint smile touched his lips. "You don't have to." She should have refused. Every instinct she possessed, every rational thread of thought, told her to step back, to leave, to return to the world where things follow rules. Instead, her hand moved. The cigar felt warm against her skin. Not heated, just not cold. As if it had been held recently. As if it had been waiting. She turned it over, her thumbs brushing the spiral. The room shifted. Not visibly. Not in a way that she could name. But something aligned. Something clicked into place. And suddenly, the silence wasn't empty. It was full, layered. Voices, not speaking, not quite, but presence, like an echo of conversations that have never fully ended. She pulled her hand back sharply, the cigar nearly slipping from her grasp. "What is this?" she whispered. The man watched her carefully. "Memory," he said. "No," she said, shaking her head. "No, that's not. This isn't. You felt it before." Her pulse quickened. Images flickered at the edge of her mind, half-formed, indistinct. Heat. Hand moving quickly over leaves. The murmur of voices in language she did not speak, but somehow understood. Long tables, endless rows. Night. Always night. She staggered back a step. "I've never been here before." The man tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Haven't you?" The question settled into her like a splinter. Because the truth was not that she remembered. It was worse. It was that something in her recognized the shape of forgetting. "I need to go," she said. She set the cigar down too quickly, the motion sharp, almost desperate. The man did not stop her. He did not reach out. He did not move at all. "You can," he said. And then after a moment, "You always can, at first." The words followed her into the street. The night had deepened, or perhaps she did. The lights seemed dimmer now, their glow stretched across the brick. The music had shifted, slower, heavier. the baseline dragging beneath the surface of the air like something moving just out of sight. Elena walked faster, then faster still. She did not look back, not at the doorway, not at the street, not at the feeling, growing now, steady and certain, that she was being watched not from behind, but from within. At her apartment, she locked the door, checked it again. The familiar space did little to steady her. The walls felt too close, the air too still. She went straight to her desk, pulling her laptop open with shaking hands. Records. If something was wrong, it would be there. It had to be. She searched her name, employment records, academic history, residency. Everything was as it should be. Normal. Documented. Finite. But as she scrolled, her cursor paused. There, buried in a digital archive she did not remember accessing before. Ybor Manufacturing Ledger, 1898. Her breath caught. Slowly, she clicked. The document had loaded line by line. The scam image resolving into ink and paper and time. She did not scroll. She didn't need to. The page opened already centered on a single entry, as if it had been waiting. Valeria, Elena. Country of origin, Spain. Shift, night. Status, active. The date beside it, 1898. Her vision blurred. No, she whispered. No, that's not. She pushed back from the desk so quickly that the chair toppled behind her. This was impossible. Forgery. Coincidence. A glitch. Anything but. A sound. Soft. Close. Behind her. Elena froze. The apartment was silent. Too silent. Slowly, so slowly, she turned. The hallway stretched before her, dimly lit, empty. But at the far end, the door to her bedroom stood open. She was certain she had closed it. Certain. A faint glow spilled from within. Not the yellow of her lamp, not the blue of her screen, but something softer, warmer, like lamp light flickering through old glass. Her feet moved before she could stop them. One step, then another. The air thickened as she approached, each breath feeling heavier than the last. The glow deepened, and within it, that smell. Tobacco. Rich, familiar and wrong. She reached the doorway and looked inside. Her bedroom was gone. In its place, rows of long wooden tables stretched into the shadows. Figures sat shoulder to shoulder, their hands moving in practiced rhythm, rolling, cutting, binding. The air shimmered with heat, and every one of them worked in silence. Elena's heart slammed against her ribs. This isn't real, she thought, and the words felt thin and fragile. One of the figures stopped. Just one. Slowly. It turned its head and looked directly at her. Its face was shadowed, indistinct, but its eyes, they held the same quiet recognition as the man behind the bar. "You're late," it said, and the voice was hers. Elena will begin to understand that she is not being hunted by her past. She is being returned to it. The spiral is not a symbol of ownership. It is a map, and every path leads inwards. The room did not vanish when Elena stepped back. That was the first thing she understood. This was not a vision that would dissolve if she blinked hard enough or whispered the right denial. It did not flicker. It did not waver. It held. The long table stretched before her, vanishing into darkness that felt less like absence and more like depth. The workers did not speak. Their hands moved with quiet precision, rolling, binding, sealing, repeating, always repeating. And at the far end, the spiral, not drawn, not stamped, formed. The table curved, subtly at first, then more distinctly, bending the room inward in a slow coil. Every row led towards that center point, though none of the workers seemed to notice. Or perhaps they did, and could not stop. Elena's breath came shallow. "This isn't my apartment," she said. Her voice was wrong here. Too sharp. Too singular. The figure who had spoken, her voice in another mouth, watched her from across the room. "You always say that," it replied. The words did not echo. They sank. "What is this place?" Elena asked. A pause. Not hesitation. Recognition. "The floor beneath your city," the figure said. "The layer they built over." Elena shook her head, her thoughts scrambling for something solid, something explainable. "This is a memory," she said. "It has to be. Something I read, something you work here." The statement landed with a finality that left no space for argument. No, you work here, the figure continued, as if she had not spoken, until your hands no longer felt like yours, until the heat moves through you instead of around you, until the night was not something that came and went, but something that stayed. The workers did not look up, but Elena felt it. A shift. A subtle awareness moving through the room like a current. They kept the best ones, the figure said softly. The ones who did not break. The ones who learned the rhythm. Elena's pulse thundered. Kept? A faint smile touched the figure's shadow face. Fed. The words settled into her bones, and something inside her, something quiet, something buried, stirred. The man behind the bar was waiting when she found him again, because of course he was. Because this was not a story of chance encounters or misconnections. This was a system, and systems do not lose track of their parts. You've seen it, he said as she entered. Not a question. Never a question. Elena did not sit this time. She did not step fully into the room. She stood in the doorway, the threshold pressing against her like a line she had not agreed to cross yet. That place, she said, under the city. What is it? The man considered her for a long moment, and then he said, Foundation. Her stomach turned. That's not... She stopped. It is older than the buildings, he continued. Older than the streets, but in need of shape, structure, purpose. He gestured faintly around them. So we built. We, she echoed. A flicker of something, amusement perhaps, moved through his expression. You think the city was an accident? The question hung in the air between them. Elena thought of the ledgers, the names that did not age, the night shifts that never ended, the spiral stamped into everything. No, she said quietly. The man nodded once. Good. Silence stretched. Then, they fed on us, Elena said. Not a question. This time it was him who paused. Yes. The honesty of it struck harder than any denial would have been. No disguises, she asked. No lies about survival or necessity. There were lies, he said, at first. There always are. And now? Now, he said, we no longer need them. The simplicity of it hollowed the room. Elena swallowed. And the workers? Remain. Her mind recoiled at the word. remained, not lived, not died, not even trapped, just remained. As what? She demanded. The man's gaze held hers. As function. Something inside her cracked then, not loudly, not cleanly, but in a slow, splintering way that spread through her like fractures through glass. And me? She asked. It came out smaller than she intended. The man did not look away. You were very good at your work. Elena stopped going to the archives. At least, that's what her calendar said. That's what her emails reflected. That's what her co-workers would later insist had happened. But the nights did not empty. They filled with heat, with the quiet, endless rhythm of hands moving over leaf and paper and time. At first she resisted. She stayed awake as long as she could, lights on, television murmuring, phone clutched in her hand as if she's connected to the outside world and that would anchor her. But exhaustion is patient. And the moment she slept, she returned. Not as an observer, not standing at the edge of the room, but seated, her hands moving, her breath steady, her thoughts quiet. The first time she woke with tobacco beneath her fingernails, she scrubbed her hands until her skin burned. The second time, she cried. By the third time, she stopped checking. Days blurred, records changed. Subtle, but then not so subtle. Her name appeared more often in older documents, in places it should not have been. Always the same. Night shift, active. She went back to the bar one final time, not because she thought she could stop it, but because some part of her, some stubborn human fragment, needed to ask. "Can I leave?" she said. The man did not pretend to misunderstand. Leave what? This, she said, gesturing vaguely at the room, the city, herself. All of it. He studied her. Longer this time. As if measuring something. Not her fear. Not her resistance. Something deeper. Finally, he said, "You already did." The words struck like cold water. Her breath caught. What? You left once, he continued. Long ago. Walked out into the daylight. Took a different name. Built a different life. Hope flared. Sharp. Desperate. Then can I do it again? A pause. and in it, something like regret. No, he said. The word landed softly. He almost looked kind. Why not? Because, he said, you were never removed. The room seemed to tilt. What does that mean? It means, he said gently. It means, he said gently, you have always been a part of the system. Her thoughts spiraled, trying to catch a hold of something solid. That's not possible. I have a life. I have records. Yes. The agreement came too easy. Too smoothly. You have all those things. Then? But they were built around your absence, he said. Silence. Deep. Final. The city needs what's beneath it, he continued. And what beneath it? Continuity. Elena's voice trembled. So what? You let people leave sometimes? Just to... what? See if they come back? The man's gaze softened. No. Then what? We let them believe they left. Morning came to Ybor City the way it always did. Soft, golden, deceptively gentle. The streets looked harmless in daylight. Tourists wandered. Shops opened. The night folded itself neatly away, tucked behind shutters and smiles. Elena walked among them. She moved easily now. Naturally. No one looked at her twice. Why would they? She was exactly where she belonged. Her reflection in the shop window showed a woman composed, steady, and present. Alive. But when she blinked, just for a moment, the glass showed something else. A flicker. A room of long tables, hands moving endlessly. She did not stop walking. She did not react. She had learned, finally, the rhythm. That evening, the archives opened as usual. A new ledger was placed carefully on the table. Fresh. Waiting. When Elena entered, she did not hesitate. She sat, opened the book, dipped her pen. Her hand moved with precise and practiced ease. No trembling, no doubt. On the first line she wrote, Rios, Mateo, shift, night, status, active. The ink settled into the page, permanent. Beneath it, faint but unmistakable, the spiral pressed through the paper, breathing. Somewhere below the city, the workers continue. Above, the music plays. The drinks pour. the stories told, and the bricks held their heat, held their memory, held their workers. If you walk through Ybor City late enough, when the night is thick and the air feels just a little too warm, you might notice the rhythm. You might feel the pull. And if you're very quiet, you might hear it. Not footsteps, not voices, but something softer, steadier. Hands working, waiting for you to remember your next shift. In Ybor City, the ground is not empty. It only looks that way. Developers like to talk about fresh starts, clean lines, new foundations. They use words like revitalize and restore, as if a place can be persuaded to forget what is already held. But the soil here is layered. Ash over brick, brick over bone, bone over something softer, older, something that does not burn clean. When they broke ground on lot 47, just 3 blocks off the main strip, they expected the usual: debris, charcoal remains from the fires, fragments of pottery, rusted tools, the occasional coin worn smoothly by time. What they did not expect was how deep the ash went. Marcus Bell had worked construction for 15 years. He knew the difference between dirt and fill, between disturbed ground and land that had settled into itself. This wasn't either. The first few feet were normal enough. Then the soil darkened. Not rich brown from Florida earth, but a dense, gray-black powder that clung to everything it touched. It coated the shovel blades, stained the gloves. It settled into the air in a fine, persistent haze that no amount of wind seemed to clear. "Old fire," one of the guys said, shrugging it off. "Big one." Marcus didn't answer. He crouched, scooping a handful into his palm. It felt wrong. Too fine. Too uniformed. Like it had been ground down repeatedly. He rubbed it between his fingers. It left a faint sheen on his skin. Not dry. Not entirely. "Keep digging," the foreman called. So they did. Down past the ash. Down into something denser. And then the first body. It wasn't whole. Not in any way that made sense. There were bones, yes, but not arranged in the way they should have been. Not lying in rest. Not collapsed in decay. They were embedded. Threaded through the earth itself, as if the ground had grown around them rather than over them. Marcus stared. "Call it in," someone muttered. But the foreman shook his head. "Probably just an old burial site. We'll report it. For now, cover it." Marcus didn't move. The bones were wrong, and beneath them, something shifted. Not visibly, not in the way he could point to, but he felt it. A subtle settling, as if the ground had noticed. That night, Marcus went home with the ash still under his nails. He scrubbed his hands twice, 3 times. It didn't matter. When he finally laid down, exhaustion pulled him under, fast and deep. And in the dark, he dreamed of his hands. Not reaching, not grasping, working. The first change was small enough to ignore. Marcus showed up early. He was not an early person. He never had been. But the next morning, he arrived at the site before the sun had fully risen, standing at the edge of the pit, staring down into the darkness, down into the darkened soil, as if waiting for something. He did not remember driving there. He did not remember leaving his house, but there he was, on time, ready, working. By the end of the week, 3 more workers were doing the same. No one talked about it. They adjusted. The schedule shifted without anyone formally changing it. Night crew stayed later. Day crew started earlier. The line between them blurred until the site was acted almost consistently. The foreman didn't complain. Work was getting done, and faster than expected, cleaner than expected. The ash, once difficult to manage, now moved easily under their hands, as if it had learned how to be handled. Across town, at a small elementary school, Miss Lila Chen noticed something else. It started with one student, then another, then 5. They were drawing the same thing over and over again. A spiral. Not neat, not artistic, compulsive. Lines pressing harder with each turn. The paper nearly tearing at the center. "Can you draw something else?" she asked gently. The student looked up at her, blank, not confused, not defiant, just empty. "Like this one?" he said, his voice calm, flat, and he went back to drawing. That evening, Lila stayed late, reviewing assignments, and the spiral appeared everywhere. Margins, back pages, between math problems and spelling words. Some faint, some carved so deeply into the paper that they left an impression on the desk beneath it. She gathered them into a stack. Too many. Far too many. A pattern. And patterns. Patterns meant something. She took them home, spread them across her kitchen table, studied them. At first, they looked identical. Then she noticed they weren't. Each spiral varied slightly, some tighter, some looser, some skewed as if drawn by a hand that didn't quite understand the shape it was trying to replicate. Together, They formed something larger. A map. Not of streets, not of buildings, of movement, flow, inward, always inward. Lila's breath slowed, her mind reaching, stretching, trying to place the feeling, trying to understand why this shape made her chest feel tight, why it felt familiar. Marcus stopped going home. Not completely, but enough. He would leave the site at night, drive somewhere, he assumed, and then return before morning with no memory of what happened in between. His house changed. Things moved. Small at first. A chair slightly out of place. A glass left on the counter. Then larger. Tools he didn't remember using. Clothes that smelt faintly of smoke, of earth, of something deeper. One night he stayed. Not because he chose to, but because leaving did not occur to him. The site was quiet. The city around alive, distant, irrelevant. He stood at the edge of the pit. The ash shifted below. Not like wind. Not like settling. Like breath. Slow. Rhythmic. In. Out. Marcus stepped forward, climbed down. His boots sank slightly into the soft, dark layer. The deeper he went, the quieter the world became. Sound dulled, air thickened, and then he heard it. Hands. Not on him. Not reaching. Working. Hundreds of them. Maybe more. Moving in perfect, timeless rhythm beneath the surface. He knelt, pressed his palm into the ground. Warm, not with heat, with activity, with motion, with purpose. His thoughts slowed, smoothed, aligned. The unease that had followed him for days faded, replaced by something else. Something simpler, easier, simpler. A sense of belonging so complete it left no room for question. He smiled, just slightly, and then began to dig. Lila followed the pattern. Not intentionally, at least. That's what she told herself. But the spiral led to somewhere. They had to. And in every version her students had drawn, every slight variation seemed to point her to the same place. Lot 47. She didn't know why she knew that. She just did. That night, she stood at the edge of the construction site. The fence was partially open, lights still burning, and below, workers moved. Slow, steady, too steady. She watched one of them for a long time. He lifted a shovel, dove it into the ground, pulled, turned, dumped. Again, and again, and again. No pause, no shift, no sign of fatigue. Another worker mirrored him, and then another. A pattern, perfectly repeated. Lila's stomach tightened. "This isn't right," she whispered. No one responded. Of course they didn't. They weren't listening. She climbed through the gap in the fence, stepped onto the dirt, and the air felt wrong. Heavy, dense, like stepping into a room where the windows have never been open. She moved closer, and the workers did not acknowledge her, did not glance up, did not react, until one did. Slowly, deliberately. His head turned, his eyes found her, and for a moment, she saw it. Not emptiness, not absence, but occupation. Something behind his eyes, something using him. "You shouldn't be here," he said. His voice was calm, even, familiar in a way that made her skin crawl. "Marcus?" she asked. Recognition flickered, brief, and then faded fast. "You shouldn't," he repeated, and then his gaze shifted past her, towards the center of the pit. Lila followed it and saw the spiral. Not drawn, not imagined, formed by the digging itself. The workers have carved it into the earth, layer by layer, turn by turn, leading downward, deeper, into something that waited. By morning, the site was closed, temporarily. Officially, structural concerns, safety hazards. The workers were sent home, or so the reports claim. Lila stood at the fence again, this time in daylight. Everything looked smaller, less threatening, manageable. The spiral in the pit had been partially filled in, covered, hidden, but not erased. She could still see its outline beneath the disturbed soil, a shape the ground did not want to forget. Behind her, footsteps approached, measured, familiar. "You found it." She turned. A woman stood a few feet away, composed, calm. Her presence felt settled, as if she belonged here in a way that went beyond ownership. "Who are you?" Lila asked. The woman smiled faintly. "Someone who keeps records." A chill moved through Lila. "There's something under there," she said. "Something wrong." The woman tilted her head. "Wrong is a matter of perspective," she answered. "People are changing," Lila insisted. "My students, your workers, they're not themselves anymore." The woman's gaze drifted towards the pit. "They're becoming consistent." The word landed heavy. "They're losing themselves," Lila said. A pause. Then she answered, "Yes." No denial. No apology. Just truth. "Why?" Lila demanded. The woman's eyes returned to hers. "Because this city was built on interruption," she said. "Lives cut short, work unfinished, motion stopped too soon." She gestured faintly to the ground. "The ash remembers that." Lila's breath shook. "And it's trying to fix it." The woman considered Lila's question. "Not fix," she said softly. Continued. Silence stretched between them. The morning light grew brighter, warmer, almost comforting. "And if we stop it?" Lila asks. The woman's expression did not change. "You won't." Not arrogance, certainty. "Because you can't?" Lila pressed. A faint smile came across her face. "Because you won't want to." That night, Lila dreamed of her classroom, her students sitting quietly, perfectly still, their papers blank, waiting. She walked between the desks, picked up a pencil, and without thinking, she began to draw. A line, curving inward, tightening, repeating. Her hand moved smoothly, effortlessly, as if it had always known how. Morning came in Ybor City. It always does. The sites reopened a week later. New crew, new permits, new assurances. Work resumed, efficient, orderly, continuous. In her classroom, Lila passed out fresh paper. "Draw anything you like," she said. The student smiled, picked up her pencil, and began. Some drew horses, some drew trees, some drew nothing at all, and a few, without hesitation, drew the spiral. Lila watched them, her expression calm, her posture relaxed. Her hand rested lightly on her desk. Beneath it, on a sheet of paper no one else could see, the lines had already begun. Because in Ybor City, the fire never truly ended. They settled. They softened. They became ash. And the ash doesn't forget. It doesn't rest. It doesn't stay dead. If you stand very still near the places where the ground has been disturbed, if you listen past the noise of the city, you might hear it. No voices, not footsteps, but something quieter, something steady, something working beneath you. At the edge of Ybor City, the city loosens. Brick gives way to boardwalk. Music dissolves into low hum of engines and the slap of water against wood. The air changes too. Less heat, more salt, and something else. Something older than both. The men who work on the docks learn quickly not to name it. They speak instead of currents, of weather, of routine. Because routine is safe. Routine means control. Routine means water will behave. It was Raul Herrera who first noticed the shift. He had been working the port long enough to understand its mood. The way the tide rolls in with the moon. The way the storms announce themselves hours before they arrive. But this wasn't a mood. It was a contradiction. The water moved against the wind. Not dramatically. Not enough to alarm anyone who wasn't paying attention. But Raul was. He stood at the edge of the dock long after his shift ended, watching the surface of the harbor ripple in two directions at once. Wind pushed one way. Water answered another. He frowned. Undercurrent, someone called from behind him. Raul didn't turn. It's too shallow for that, he said. No response came. And when he finally looked back, he was alone. That night the tide came in early. Not by minutes, by hours. And when it did, the water rose without a sound. No crash, no rush. Just a slow, deliberate lift, as if something was breathing in and taking a breath. Dr. Mara did not believe in anomalies. Not in the way most people use the word. To her, an anomaly was simply a pattern not yet understood. And patterns could be studied, measured, explained. She was called to the harbor after maintenance crew reported unusual growth along several dock pilings. Probably algae, the report said, or an invasive species. Mara expected as much. What she found was neither. The structure clung to the wood in cluster formations, pale and soft-looking, their surfaces faintly translucent. At first glance, they resembled barnacles. At second, they did not. They pulsed. Not rapidly, not obviously, but with a slow, steady rhythm that became impossible to ignore once seen. Mara crouched, gloved fingers hovering just above one of the growths. Bioluminescence? One of the workers asked. Possibly, she said, but the word felt insignificant. Back in her lab, the samples behaved incorrectly. They did not decay. They did not dry out. They did not respond to temperature change the way organic material should. And when she placed one under the microscope, she froze. The structure was not cellular, not in any recognizable way. It was organized, layered, like tissue, but not tissue she had ever studied. And in its center, a hollow opening, closing, opening, closing, like a lung. Mara leaned back slowly. No, she whispered, but the sample continued its quiet rhythm. Unbothered, unconcerned, alive. The first ship had no record, no schedule arrival, no listed origin. It appeared just before dawn, sliding through the harbor fog with a silence that felt deliberate. Raoul saw it first. Of course he did. He had stopped sleeping well, stopped trusting the water, stopped believing in routine. The ship was wrong. Not broken, not damaged. Wrong. Its hull bore the markings that looked almost familiar. Symbols that might have been letters if letters had grown instead of being written. He watched it as it docked. No crew appeared. No announcements were made. And yet, the cranes began to move. Workers, his workers, stepped forward without instruction, their motions smooth and practiced, prepared. Raoul grabbed one of them by the arm. "Where is this from?" he demanded. The man turned. His eyes were calm, clear, occupied. "On schedule," he said. Raoul's grip tightened. "This isn't on any." "On schedule," the man repeated, and then gently removed Raoul's hand. The cargo was unloaded in silence. Crates identical in size and shape, each one sealed with a mark that Raoul recognized without understanding. A spiral. That night, Raoul followed one of the trucks, and he told himself it was curiosity, but it felt more like necessity. The truck moved through the city without stopping, past the lights, past the noise, towards the older streets, towards Ybor City. Mara followed the data. Raoul followed the track. And both paths led down. Beneath the city, the air changed. Damp, dense, alive in a way that made breathing feel shared. The tunnels were older than the buildings above them, brick-lined and curving. Not quite straight, not quite natural, and always leaning inward. They met without surprise, as if they had been expecting, as if the path had been designed for convergence. "You see it too," Mara said. Not a question. Raoul nodded. "Been hearing it," he replied. She tilted her head. "Hearing what?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestured ahead. "Listen." At first there was nothing. Then, a sound. Low. Deep. Not mechanical. Not environmental. Biological. A breath. They moved forward together. The tunnel widened, opened, and there they saw it. A water-filled chamber entirely, its surface dark and still. But beneath, movement. Not waves, not current. Expansion and contraction. The entire body of water rose slightly, then fell. Rose, then fell. A breath. Mara's voice trembled. "That's not possible." Raoul stared. "It's been here this whole time," he said. Not a realization, a remembering. At the edge of the chamber, crates were stacked neatly, opened, empty. Their contents gone or absorbed. The spiral was everywhere now, in the architecture, in the water's movement, in the very shape of the space. "This isn't a harbor," Mara whispered. Raoul shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "It's a mouth." By morning, everything appeared normal. Ships came and went. Records matched. Logs aligned. The harbor behaved. Mara's lab reported contamination. Samples lost. Data corrupted. She filed her notes carefully away. Precisely. Filed them where they should not be read. Raoul returned to work. On time. Every day. He no longer watched the water for contradiction. He watched for rhythm. In Ybor City, the nights continue. Music, laughter, heat, life. And beneath it, the breath. Steady, patient, growing. The ships still arrive. You won't see them on any schedule. You won't find them on any map. But they come carrying something that does not belong to land, carrying something that does not need to. And when the tide rises just a little too smoothly, when the water feels just a little still, when the air tastes faintly of salt and something deeper, that's when you might notice it. Not a wave, not a ripple, but a pause. The harbor inhaling. Because it isn't just receiving anymore. It's learning, adapting, preparing. And one day, it won't stop at the edge of the docks. It will breathe in, and the city will answer. Because Ybor City was never built beside the water. It was built for it. And the harbor does not forget to breathe. It just waits until everything else learns how. You might feel it. Not fear. Not exactly. Just a wait. A quiet awareness that something is still moving, even now. That somewhere beneath Ybor City, the work continues. The ash settles. The harbor breathes. And none of it needs you to believe in it. Because places like this don't rely on belief. They rely on time, on repetition, on the simple truth that everything leaves something behind. And sometimes, those things don't stay buried. So when you leave here tonight, when the lights come back on, and the world feels steady again, pay attention to the warmth in the ground, to the rhythm and the quiet, to the moments where everything feels slightly off. Because stories like these don't end when they're told. They wait. They echo. They continue. And if you ever find yourself back in Ybor City, walking a little too late, listening a little too closely, you may realize something unsettling. Not that the stories were true, but they never stopped. The candle is burning low now, and the swamp has grown quiet. If you're still awake, there's always another story waiting for you here. Sleep well, and I'll be right here when you return.